So this opens up a lot of doors when you're able to add volume. So we can do a lot of different iterations of this design. Let's do circular head again. And let's say you've been doing these balloon people for quite a while. Now you can turn them into star people. And the only difference with star people is that you kind of tapering the ends of the limbs. Like this. And I'd argue that that looks a little bit better. You could also add in little feet like this. I'd say it's not a huge improvement on the actual structure or the form, but it can look a little bit better. I don't know, there's something about the taper that just, I think it's a little bit more realistic, a slightly nicer shapes, more pointed, instead of just this random kind of blow up balloon like those dogs that clowns make. The problem still remains that all of these poses have been more or less just facing us, but they are immediately kind of defeated when you ask them to stand facing the right or facing the left. And that's because that requires a different it requires a different approach. It requires that you have knowledge of form, really. I mean, you could ask this one to well, this one is actually better, but you could ask this stick figure to stand to the right or left and it would look like that, which again is the problem of you don't know which way it's facing. The feet can indicate it, but then after that, like, what are you going to do with the hands? They have to kind of protrude a little bit, kind of difficult. But really what you need to do from here is to start to add three-dimensional volume. So I can just demonstrate this by kind of wrapping these lines around, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh wait, yeah, it's actually kind of standing out of the page. Can even draw through there. So what would it be like if I was able to draw a cube? Can you draw a cube? Can you draw a box? If you can, then that will unlock this next part. So I've just drawn a box here. Oh, sorry, not a very good one. And let's say that's the torso. It's actually, I don't want to overcomplicate things yet. I'm actually going to change this circle or sphere that we've been drawing this whole time. The head is actually more like a box than a circle or sphere. And when you draw it as a box, it actually gives it a lot more detail. It makes it easier to communicate. So let's draw a box instead. I think that's looking much better. So I mean, you could continue to draw stick legs, but I would actually start to well, I'd actually want to draw the pelvis. You know, I am going to make that jump now. I'm going to draw pelvis. I'll just draw it straight on. Those two will be connected, but this is more like a sort of underlying skeleton. Also, this guy's turning out to be pretty tall. And I'll continue to do this box-like fashion for the rest of the body. I'll just draw the whole thing as like this trend, so it's 100% box. Alright, well, that's my robot construction. I suppose that's what it looks like. I've drawn the forearms a little bit too long compared to the upper arm, but it's alright as a demonstration. So this one, we are now absolutely clear what angle it is facing. It's facing. It's kind of almost towards us, like a 3/4 angle. And so this is great for communicating that. It's also now existing in perspective, although some of these perspective lines wouldn't be, they'd be a bit dodgy, but it's actually in parallel perspective. We can trace the lines of these boxes back to a vanishing point way off in the distance, back that way. So it's now existing really in a kind of represented 3D space, and that's something that none of the others before it have been doing. This means that we can draw this same one and draw it from crazy angles, because we can foreshorten those things, and foreshortening is where you overlap certain things. So, you know, we could start drawing it like from the top down or something. Once you know how to draw a box, and you can draw that box from any angle, you can do this. And it's just about adding boxes. You know, you can erase these little lines behind. These are looking a bit shaky because I'm going through them very fast. And it's going to get smaller and smaller because there's this vanishing point that we're going towards. Anyway, I've run out of page there, but you get the idea. So this is kind of next up on the hierarchy of detail and information that's being brought across, being communicated. However, there are some downsides to this one. As you can probably tell, it's taken me a lot longer for me to draw this box one. If you look at how many lines collectively are in this one, there are a lot of lines compared to previous versions, and really I don't have a solution to this. As you add more detail and information to your poses, they will require more lines, so it will take longer, and that's just something you gotta kind of accept at some point. But this is like necessary. A lot of this is necessary detail. Like, we actually want to know where the character is facing. However, you know, it's quite a rigid thing. We actually don't have boxes. We're not box shaped, so this actually needs some further refining and stuff. Let me just continue this, because otherwise it's going to bug me. But, you know, a lot of the time when I'm drawing my poses, my keyframes, I am thinking in terms of boxes, you know, and it is really, really helpful to think about boxes and how they work, you know. Another alternative is cylinder, so you can make cylinder people. So here I'm gonna make a cylinder person. I would probably keep the head as a box, just because I think that boxes are just a really good way of describing the head. So even with a cylinder person, I would create a box. If you actually look at the human head, it's actually more like it's a slightly more complex box. It's actually like this. So there's this little that's where the groove of the neck tends to be. It's also got this kind of slightly sloped forehead, and again, it depends on the person, you know, but yeah, it is more complex than a box. But for this, we can represent it, especially at this distance, we can represent it as just a box. And cylinders, I don't know if I prefer this method. I feel like I prefer the box method, even though the box has more lines, because you've got to draw in, like, you know, you got those extra lines. Those lines are kind of good. They're good at pointing the direction that they're facing in. But, you know, it might be better actually to do these cylinder arms though, like that. I think it is. think the arms are naturally quite cylindrical, and with these cylinders you can break them apart, so you can have, you know, one cylinder for the forearm and one cylinder for the upper arm, like that. That's starting to look really like human arms, you know. And having that base of that cylinder is really good for explaining the form. That means that if I wanted to move that, let me just create some more space on this page. That means that if I wanted to, I could have the hand really reach out at you and look like it's gonna touch you, because I can foreshorten these. So here you can only see the base of that, making the thumb now, and maybe I'm giving it too much detail to be called a cylinder. I've given it 3 fingers instead of 4. Let me just move this one out. Having it reach out at you, and I can do this because these are cylinders, and having that base of the cylinder, that's actually what you're seeing a lot of the time, is you're seeing the base of that cylinder when I'm doing that, and the block head, foreshortening that. Everything here is foreshortened. Here I'm going to give it a block torso as well, because I prefer the block torso. Let's foreshorten that, but in the opposite direction now. And you know, you can mark where the eyes are. Actually, the eyes would be halfway down the head, so about there. Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of combined the pelvis and the upper torso here, so I'll just leave them like it is. And then you see here, I actually want to do cylinder, more of a cylinder kind of shape. I'm going to draw through here so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. You see how the base is so important though for describing that three-dimensional form and showing whether it's coming out at you or going back in space. I'm doing this all with simple shapes. There are no real complex shape. I think the most complex shape here is the thumb, and even that can be broken down further into these more basic shapes here. So that's really what it's about, like constructing the character. It's constructing it because you're using very simple shapes to create something very complex. And this is really important for animation, especially because, you know, you've got to be able to draw the human body. If you're drawing humans, which you probably are, you've got to draw the human body in every conceivable angle. Like, if the character moves into a certain angle, you have to be able to draw it in that angle. There's no point trying to look it up on Google Images for a reference. Yes, you can record your own reference, of course, but even then, that'll only get you so far. And at some point, you're going to have to rely on your imagination. And when you do rely on your imagination, it's very important that you can understand it in terms of just very basic shapes. Really, the fundamental shape is the cube. That cube there is like, once you can draw that cube from any angle, you're set. You're away. Like, you don't need me anymore. You can make cube things. Like, look at Minecraft. Minecraft is a game where like entire worlds and characters and things are just made out of these little cubes. So that should be adequate in showing you the power of the cube. I'm a strong believer in the power of the cube. Alright, I might do an extra video after this, I don't know. I need to look back at my notes, but that's the main lesson that I wanted to show in this one, I think, is the progression from stick figure to these more complex kind of portrayals of a human. Starting from a line. We started from a line, and then we moved all the way up to something that can reach out of the screen and feel like it's touching you, or feel like it's reaching out at you. Okay,